So I thought this was something. So for years and years, speaking of debates and political, the Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott. And he's one of those players, and I don't know why, because he's got a little bit of a milquetoast personality. He's not polarizing. He's not really outspoken. He seems like a nice guy. He's just not a controversial figure. I mean, but controversy finds him mostly because he's a Dallas Cowboy quarterback. And, Tony Romo was another guy. Tony Romo laughs a lot on TV. I think Tony Romo's funny. I don't see Tony Romo as controversial. But being a Dallas Cowboy quarterback, Tony Romo was debated constantly. By the way, I think Tony Romo was underrated. I've always felt Dak's a little bit overrated, but I mean, he's a B-plus quarterback. But I thought this was interesting. So Vic Fangio is the defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the sharpest guys in the NFL. He's seen every quarterback. He's older. He's been around the league forever. And they asked him this week, what will it be like facing Cooper Rush, the backup quarterback, instead of Dak Prescott? And his answer was, won't change anything. Excuse me? I beg your jargon? What? Hello? It won't change anything? I mean, if Patrick Mahomes was out, Carson Wentz was in, think the Chiefs would look the same? I mean, if Lamar Jackson was out and Josh Johnson was in, you think the Ravens would be the same offense? Even B to B-plus quarterbacks, if Baker Mayfield's out and Kyle Trask is in, Tampa can't score. You think Kyle Trask is taking the Chiefs to overtime on Monday night? You think Kyle Trask is doing that? Baker Mayfield did. He's a B++ quarterback. Tua, we don't even love Tua. You don't even love Tua. He was out, the backup, they couldn't score. Miami, with a brilliant offensive coach, with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, good running backs, couldn't score. Yet, when Dak leaves and Cooper Rush comes in, undrafted, 2017, undrafted, 2 3-star athlete, Central Michigan quarterback, not Michigan State, Central Michigan, directional school, same offense. And you'll wonder why there's those of us that say, what are you doing paying Dak like Patrick Mahomes? Cooper Rush has had 6 starts in Dallas. He had a stinker once against Philadelphia. So let's go to the 5 games of the 6, the 5 games that he won, because everybody has stinkers. Mahomes has bad games. In the 5 of 6 games, the 5 games he won, his passer rating, 96. Touchdown to interception, 5-1. Those are Dak's numbers. He's the backup. And there's no market for Cooper Rush. It's not like he's this hidden gem that the trade deadline, people are seeking Cooper Rush. He's a backup quarterback. So this goes and really proves at the core, the film doesn't lie, that Dak is living off the affinity Jerry Jones has for him, and he's living off an early reputation based on weapons when he wasn't paid very much. Dez and Amari Cooper and Zeke in his prime and the Cowboys' top offensive line in the league for about a 5-year run. He's living off that. I mean, Sean McVay moved off Goff. Goff's better than Dak. Alex Smith was in Kansas City. Andy Reid moved off him. He's certainly as good as Dak. And Jerry Jones just keeps filling up that bag for Dak Prescott. But ultimately, Vic Fangio, who's seen every quarterback in this league for 15 years, is like Dak, Cooper Rush. It's the same offense. So when quarterbacks are young, and this is a cautionary tale for another team in the NFL, when quarterbacks are young, they're cheap. And when they're cheap, you can stockpile talent in their roster. And then once you pay them, you have to get rid of those weapons. Even a great quarterback like Joe Burrow can't do it alone. Cincinnati doesn't have good enough players. But keep your eye on San Francisco and Brock Purdy. It's a prime example. San Francisco and Brock Purdy. Brock makes nothing. The roster is loaded. So San Francisco, take a look at Dallas. Is that Dak is living off Jerry's affinity for him. He's living off those early weapons and reputation. A defensive coordinator who's seen every quarterback in this league for over a decade. Cooper Rush and Dak, it'll be the same offense. And it will, by the way. So last night, it was the first one. Tom Brady again in 50 minutes. It was the first college football rankings came out. And so it's, college football is really become, mostly with a college football playoff, it's going to become a 2-conference sport, SEC and the Big Ten. It's going to look much more like, because this is what the TV partners want, it's going to look like the NFL, AFC, NFC. I mean, you'll have the Big 12, the ACC, the Pac-12's already dissolved, but it's going to be Big 12, Big 10, and the SEC. And there is this thing, I would call it the illusion of inclusion. So everybody feels great last night. The rankings come out for the 12-team playoff. Everybody said, look at Indiana. Awesome. That is, BYU, the little guy. Oh, that's awesome. And Boise State, I love it. Boise State. You really think Boise State or Indiana? Today, Indiana would have to open up at Tennessee and then play neutral field games against Ohio State, Georgia, Texas. We really think Indiana's going to run through that? But the one thing I looked at, and I don't care what the rankings say, Oregon's the best team I've seen in the country, and every time I see Oregon, the more impressed I am with them. But I thought it was interesting that I've watched the same games the committee has, and are they trying to be PC or whatever their analytics say? Ohio State 2, Georgia 3. If they played tomorrow, who would you take? I would take Georgia all day long over Ohio State. Better coach, better quarterback, better defense, better conference. And Georgia's quarterback's not even playing well, but he'll get drafted. So, I mean, I looked at that thing yesterday. Penn State is 6th. You really think they can play for the Natty? So you can create a 30-team playoff. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that Indiana's 9-0 and BYU is 8-0. They don't have enough NFL bodies, and football's different than basketball. And even in because there's so much violence that you get guys hurt every game. So if an Indiana or a BYU or a Boise State has to play 3 or 4 games in a row against these high-end teams, it just fall apart physically. Even in basketball, where you don't have that level of violence, if you have one great player, I remember covering David Robinson when he played at Navy. Like one great player. Even in college basketball, it always ends up down to the Elite 8, 1 seeds, 2 seeds, 3 seeds, 4 seeds, and maybe one, 11 or 12 dark horse seed. So I see Miami here. Everybody's excited about Miami. Miami is a vote for Cam Ward and nostalgia. You're thinking Miami, Michael Irvin, Miami. That's not what they are. You take Cam Ward off this team, they're a 5-6 win team. They almost lost to Cal. The 4 teams at the top of this, Georgia, Oregon, Texas, Ohio State. Those were the preseason 1, 2, 3, 4. I forget the order, but preseason 1, 2, 3, 4. So, but I would say this when I looked at this, my first take is, who would really trust Ohio State over Georgia if they played tomorrow? How could you? Georgia wins those big games. Ohio State didn't. What's the biggest game this year for Georgia? The Texas game. Backed against the wall, on the road, humiliated Texas. You think Ohio State's going to Austin and humiliating Texas? No, they're not. You think Georgia's going to Oregon and giving up 35 points? I don't. So remember, half of Ohio State's fans want the coach fired. Their quarterback's arguably the weakest of the 4 biggest programs right now, top 4 in the country, and they end up short in all these big games. So as I watched that, I thought, I don't know who could watch Georgia beat Texas. How could you watch that game? I understand Oregon's undefeated, but of all the one-loss teams, how could you watch that game and have Georgia below Ohio State? It feels, the committee is trying to make sure, the analytic, watch the games. Ohio State's not going to Austin and doing that to Texas. They went to Penn State and struggled with a Penn State team that's average at quarterback, below average at wide receiver, and didn't play particularly well. You had fans at Penn State yelled at the coach, James Franklin. He had to confront one of them.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.